Before we start our podcast, a lot of you have been listening to Swisspreneur for inspiration on your own entrepreneurial journey. And I want to tell you about a great opportunity to get non-dilutive funding and coaching for your startup. If you have an innovative business idea, consider joining Venture. They're Switzerland's leading startup competition, and every year they award over 500,000 Swiss francs in cash prizes, McKinsey & Company business consulting packages, and an amazing mentorship program. Submit your free application by March 3rd on venture.ch.
Having a co-founder, I know, I experience this now with Pabio, takes a lot of the pressure away, right? Because you have someone you can share everything with.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Carlo, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
It's a pleasure.
You're the co-founder and CEO of Pabio, a subscription-based furniture and interior design provider. Before we talk about your latest venture, we want to learn more about your personal background. First of all, you studied business administration at the University of Bern here in Switzerland, but at the same time, you're also building your very first venture, the explainer video company Cleverclip, which you founded in 2013. So how was Cleverclip actually born? Can you walk us through the early days?
Yeah, sure. So that actually started prior to me studying at university. So Cleverclip started at high school. And I started as a filmmaker, so I always wanted to become a movie director, and I bought myself a very expensive DSLR camera that I couldn't afford, and I had to pay back the loan to my parents eventually, and so I started producing image movies around Bern, and eventually this industrial company came up to me and asked me if I could provide them with a video that explains the production process, and I looked at the whole facility and realized that taking a movie of that is terribly boring. It's just a metal box. So I figured I'm gonna have to abstract it in one way or another, and Googled, researched, and came across these explainer videos. Keep in mind this was 2011, so there was explainer video wasn't even a thing yet.
Right.
That was completely something new, and so I came across these explainer videos. Produced it, and the company immediately, they loved it. They immediately ordered 3 or 4 more movies like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that's where I realized, and I was in high school, right? So I produced 2-3 explainer videos per month at 2,000-3,000 Swiss francs each. So I was rich. I was super rich, right? And I figured I could probably turn this into a company, like a small side gig. And then, basically started Cleverclip right after. I went traveling a bit and then came back and started Cleverclip.
What did you do with the money as a high school student? I can imagine you had quite a few opportunities to spend it.
I did, yes, I did. And I used those opportunities very responsibly and spent all of it.
But I guess that's a good learning if you have that early on, right? That, hey, if you have a lot of money, in relative terms back then you can also spend it quite fast.
Yeah, it's dangerous, right? There's always you always find ways to spend money. So I learned that early on. But in any case, I started the business and it took off unexpectedly, I should say. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, after 2 years of purely focusing on Cleverclip, I figured I at least need to get a bachelor, so I have something, and then went to the University of Bern.
That's such a great story. So from wanting to become a filmmaker, director, you actually stumbled into entrepreneurship. Was there any role model in your family or any other person that motivated you to become an entrepreneur, or was it really that coincidence that you sort of found a business model that was working?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the family, not really. I mean, my uncle is a really successful entrepreneur, but back then we weren't really close. So I wouldn't say in my close environment there was a particular role model. In the film industry, obviously, I mean, a director most of the time is an entrepreneur, and particularly the ones I was interested in, George Lucas with Industrial Light and Magic is an entrepreneur, and also combined art and technology in a unique way. That was what fascinates me to this day. And then obviously, the Richard Branson and Steve Jobs and all these guys. Yeah, as a teenager, they were very influential on me.
Were they also influential for you to take the decision after high school to focus on Cleverclip instead of just going, for the bachelor's degree right after?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Steve Jobs book basically influenced me on taking a trip around the world, particularly through India, because I figured if he did it, I need to do it as well. and then also kind of gave me the confidence that you don't really need university to become a successful entrepreneur.
That sounds like a life-changing trip. What other sort of learnings did you take away from traveling the world?
Oh, many. But I think the major ones. So we've been traveling through India and Southeast Asia for 10 months. Me and my girlfriend back then. And that was the first big exposure, like the first major exposure I had to countries outside of Europe. And it had a really deep effect on me. So one thing I learned was that we're so incredibly lucky, and in such a crazy bubble here in Switzerland, it's really difficult to fathom how lucky we are compared to the rest of the world. And I just figured during that time that if I don't make the best out of this, because I just understood how luck piled on top of each other. For me, I was born in Switzerland, born into a really good family. I got a lot of love and support from my parents and my environment, and I have a decent IQ, and I just figured all these lucky coincidences piled up, so I have to do the best. I have to make the best out of it, because otherwise it's an absolute waste.
And then you said the best thing is to produce explainer videos or to be an entrepreneur in that regard.
The best way is to become an entrepreneur. Yeah, that's one of the things I truly believe is that entrepreneurship is one of the most efficient ways to change the world. Yeah, that's a deep belief I hold since very early on.
And nevertheless, you then decided to still go for university to chase that bachelor's degree. Why did you decide so? If you said, "Hey, it's not actually required."
That's my insurance. That was my insurance. I figured if shit hits the fan, I at least have something. Yeah.
But insurance for what? Just to find a decent job afterwards, or what was that insurance meant for?
Yeah, I guess so. It was also a bit of an ego thing, to be honest. My family has a very strong academic background, and I figured. I need at least something, but looking back, I'm very honest on this topic. Looking back, I feel, except for financial accounting, I wouldn't say there was a good enough return on investment on the bachelor.
Yeah, it's quite a time investment.
It was, yes. I mean, I worked full time. I bootstrapped Cleverclip and had a crazy work schedule, and on the side studied full time. So it was very, very intense. Yeah, it wasn't worth it at the end, I wouldn't say.
Yeah. How did you manage your time? Studying full time and building your own company full time by bootstrapping it. That's intense. How did you manage your time? You just didn't sleep anymore.
I didn't sleep too much. That was for one, and then. I guess I got really efficient in. So I barely made it to lectures in person. I got really efficient in reading. So I became because I had to. I became a relatively fast reader, and just became, I think, a very effective student. Not particularly, I don't think a lot of the stuff stuck and was sustainable, but I was reasonably fast in learning.
Yeah, you had it in there for the exam and then it was gone.
It's exactly how it was, yes.
I mean, it's a fair point. That's how the system works, I guess.
Yeah.
And you were building Cleverclip still at the very young age. And did you ever have any, issues with that people didn't take you seriously, that they say, hey, why should we do business with you as a big brand, as a well-known corporate, because you're so young and you just started your company? Was that ever a challenge for you to win deals or to win the trust of people to work with you?
Interestingly enough, it was always a fear of mine. I was always afraid of that happening. Interestingly enough, I think never really occurred. I can't remember any situation where people didn't take me seriously because I was relatively young. So no, I actually would. It was a fear that I had because I was, in my early 20s, but not that I would remember. No.
You probably delivered good quality, so it was never an issue.
Yeah, or they were just too nice to tell me.
Maybe the Swiss way, yeah. But it's good to hear. It was a fear, but it was not real. I think that's a great motivator for anybody out there thinking about starting their own company at the young age. That hey, it's probably not as difficult as you might think in your head that it might be.
Oh, it's certainly more difficult than you think in your head it is. But that particular fear was unfounded. But I think overall it's a very, very, very difficult endeavor. But this particular thing, yeah, and I think that's with most things. It's usually the problems that you stumble upon are not the ones you anticipate, right? It's other things that really make your life a bit more difficult. Yeah.
So now we heard of a thing that was easier than expected. What was more difficult than you anticipated? Many things, I guess.
Many things. I think the major one, if I have to boil it down, is the psychological pressure you have as an entrepreneur. I think that's something I still have to work on. I think it's and I don't think we talk about this often enough, but I think it's a real. That's for me personally. That's the real challenge, right? To live with this huge responsibility and pressure, and everything hinges on your decisions, right? And if you make the wrong decisions, you eventually have to fire people, and it just has this whole second and third order consequences that are quite difficult sometimes to grapple with.
How did you handle that, and how also did that show in your daily life when you experienced that psychological pressure?
I think with time I got better at it for sure. I'm less. I'm getting less often thrown out of balance, I would say. But early on, if sales didn't go well, I got nervous and my mood declined probably, and then my employees realized that, and it was just a whole thing. And I should say I started Cleverclip myself, so I was a solo founder. Cannot recommend. I would probably not do this again. And that obviously having a co-founder, I know, like I experience this now with Pabio, is takes a lot of the pressure away, right? Because you have someone you can share everything with.
Yeah. Any other tips or any outside tools or help that you got that helped you navigate through the psychological pressure part? Because I think there are so many other founders that can relate to that, and they finally think it's so great to finally hear someone speaking about that. So I want to learn more about their experience, how they sort of broke that negative cycle and came out stronger out of the whole experience.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I joined EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, early on, very early, and they were gracious enough to let me in, and that was a big help. So for those listeners who don't know what EO is, it's called Entrepreneur Organization. It's basically it's organized in chapters, in local chapters, and then each chapter has a forum of about 7 to 10 entrepreneurs, and you meet on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, and then really openly share your problems and issues, and they can be business in nature, but also personal relationship issues, and that helped a lot for sure. Yeah, to have people around me, and one thing you realize early on that I tend to dismiss more often than not is everyone has these struggles, right? Everyone. Literally, I know so many very, very successful and impressive men and women, and everyone has the same issues. We're all struggling with the same things.
That helps, to put that into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we now fast forward a bit, in 2020, you then also made quite a bold decision. You decided to step down as CEO from Cleverclip. So I wonder what led you to that decision. Were you just getting bored with the repetitive tasks at hand, or were there other reasons why you decided, hey, it's now time for me to leave the operational role?
Yeah, so I built up Cleverclip for about 7 years. And an agency it was for me anyways, it was a fantastic start into entrepreneurship because you can easily bootstrap it. You don't need any external investments because you can pretty much finance everything from the cash flow. And it allowed me to generate some cash and more importantly to get a lot of experience. And after doing this for 7 years, I figured I need to do something new. I want to try something new. I got too comfortable, really. The thing with an agency is also everything has two sides. The flip side is that you cannot scale it indefinitely. There's this ceiling that you eventually hit, and it becomes really, really difficult to scale beyond that. And we were, with our size, we were already one of the bigger agencies in Switzerland. So I just figured I need to do something new and start a new adventure, basically.
That's also quite a big self-reflection that you put in there to come to that conclusion, because other people might say, I don't want to leave my baby, although it's not that fun anymore for me, a bit repetitive, I hit the ceiling, I can't let go. Was that ever a challenge for you to let go of the company you basically built from scratch?
Also, to be honest, I hear this one a lot, but for me personally, not really. No, I have absolutely an amazing team. Rachel, that took over as CEO. I knew from the get-go she was with the company for 6 years or 5 years of those 7 years. So basically from the beginning. And I knew, the company will be in very good hands. And now looking back, when she took over 2 years ago, she's been doing a better job at running the company than myself. So I definitely made the right decision.
Awesome.
And no, that was never really a problem. I'm obviously, it's still my baby, right? I really care deeply about the company, but I never had troubles letting go. No.
So now, if I can put it that way, she running the company better than you, as you just said, you're probably even very happy about that step.
Absolutely, yes. This was a dream outcome, to be honest, because I found someone who really cares about the company and takes great care of it, and at the same time I can focus on something new and don't have to worry about what's going on there.
And how did you find the right role for you after you left the operational part? Technically you're still the owner of the company, right? So how much do you still want to be involved, and how did you make that decision? Because it was clear for you, no more operational involvement, but at the same time, it's still your company.
Yeah. I think, my strength is I think I'm doing a decent job in strategic decisions. So it was clear from the get-go. And Rachel is a lot better with handling people and relationships and actually doing the work. So I think we have a great dynamic. I can come up with the crazy ideas and the big vision. That's the easy part, and then she has to do the hard work. It's fantastic. I enjoy it a lot.
That's like a great combination.
For me, it is, anyways. Yeah.
So maybe you have to ask Rachel too.
Yeah. So
was it ever an option for you to sell the company completely, to say, hey, there's someone else taking over, maybe a big agency conglomerate or anybody else that might be interested in buying the company?
Over the years, we got some offers, but I always figured it was never really seriously on my mind. I mean, never say never. If one day there's an offer I can't refuse, then that's that. But I was never eager to sell it. No.
Or the offers just weren't good enough.
Or the offers weren't good enough. Yeah.
Then after you left the operational role at Cleverclip, you didn't take a break for too long because you just jumped right into your next venture. So also in 2020, you co-founded Pabio together with your co-founder Anand. And first of all, what problem do you actually solve with Pabio? Can you talk a bit more about that so people have a better understanding about what you exactly do?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I talk in first person because Anand joined me a bit later, but I knew that ending the operational role at Cleverclip, I knew that I knew a few things about my new venture. So I knew it had to be in this intersection between tech and design. That's where I feel comfortable, and I also knew that it had to be something scalable. Exactly for the reason that we established a few minutes ago. That I've built this SME case, this bootstrapped SME case, and I figured now I really want to try my hands on the polar opposite of that, which is a hyperscale VC-backed company. And the third thing was that was not a necessary requirement, but I thought it would be great if I could do a B2C product. I've been working now in B2B for 7 years. I like it a lot, but I just figured I want to have a product that enriches the life of my friends and potentially my family, and not just some project manager at some big corporation.
So that's quite a strong motivation to have. For you, it was always clear that you would want to do your next venture and not just do something completely different. I think since starting Cleverclip, I eventually realized that I'm probably not going to get out of this entrepreneurship ever. Once you're in there, you're never going to get out of it if it's really the fit for you.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I can't see anyone. I also don't think anyone would ever want to hire me. To be honest, I don't think I'm.
That's what we hear from many guests. They say I became unemployable.
Yeah, I'm pretty. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that statement. I'm unemployable. Yeah.
And what's striking here is that you chose a completely different setup. So going B2C instead of B2B, going venture-backed instead of bootstrapping. Why do you want to do everything where you didn't have an experience yet? Why not, monetizing the learnings you already made with Cleverclip? Was it really the new thing that was so appealing to you, or did you want to grow as a person, or say, hey, I can not only do B2B, I can also do B2C and prove yourself? What was the motivator behind that?
Yeah, the learning experience, really. So I just figured, where's the biggest learning opportunity again for me? And I would have gotten bored if I've would have done something similar. So I figured it has to be something different.
And now, of course, please also quickly walk us through the product. So what do you exactly offer with your new venture?
Yeah, so I can quickly tell the story of how it all started. So with these kind of requirements in my head, I mean, as an entrepreneur yourself, you probably also have a list of startup ideas. Everyone has that. It's a very, very long Evernote list in my case. And so there were a bunch of ideas on there that I've had for many, many years. And with this list, I basically went and visited friends and family members and colleagues, usually at home for a coffee or for a tea in the afternoon. That was pre-COVID, I should say. And I just wanted to explore different options and talk about everything and anything, see where they have pains in their life that I could possibly solve, discuss multiple ideas, business ideas. And one thing that always stuck out was how terribly designed their apartments were. Absolutely grotesque how shitty their interior were. And if they're listening, you guys know who you are. I told you. I was very upfront. And I should say, I think my apartment, our apartment, is quite I put a lot of thought into it. And whenever we have guests, we always get compliments on how nice it is. And I always felt that's a really nice compliment to receive, is someone coming for dinner and then telling you, oh, that's really a nice cave you have here, basically, right? It's something very fundamental. And after the third or fourth time, I just asked blatantly, like, if they don't care, if they don't care about interior design, if they ever thought about, paying for it. And the answer I always received was, I would love to live in a nicely designed apartment, but I just rent this place and in 3 years I'm out. And my first thought was, 3 years is a really long time. And I would hate to live in a place like this for 3 years.
Agree.
And another anecdote is, I think most people would never pay for an Airbnb if it were to look like the apartment they live in. So I just figured we maybe there's something we can do there. And looking deeper into it, I realized that nice interior design, the service per se is not what makes it expensive. The really expensive part is that once you invite a designer that creates a nice concept for you, you have to purchase furniture for 15,000, 20,000 Swiss francs to make it a reality. And that's where most people just fail because they don't either have the money or also reasonably, it just doesn't make sense to purchase this kind of furniture when you just rent the place.
Sure.
And so our idea was to combine both, right? To offer an interior design package and then rent out the furniture so they don't have to purchase it. And then, so with Pabio, and that's where our value proposition comes in, with Pabio, you basically get your apartment fully furnished by a professional interior designer, and then you rent high quality furniture on a monthly subscription.
That's amazing. And why is that better, to have a monthly subscription instead of purchasing it yourself? I mean, there are multiple, pros for doing that, but you have certain answers to that question.
Yeah. For most people, it's just not affordable to buy that furniture up front. And by offering a subscription, we can do a few things, right? So first of all, because the furniture is, the subscription price is mainly driven by the depreciation time. If we get high quality furniture, you pay a really low monthly subscription fee because the furniture is durable. So if you actually look at the pricing, it's, if we reasonably expect it, you change your furniture, your IKEA furniture, whatever, every few years, it's actually cheaper for you to rent high quality furniture than purchase what's called fast furniture every few years, because you have to replace it, obviously. Mm-hmm. So you're actually, as a consumer, you're actually better off financially, always under the assumption that you move apartments every 3-4 years, and you with that movement you exchange a big part of your fast furniture. Right. But if that's the case, then you're financially better off than by renting it than if you were to purchase it.
And then there's also the sustainability factor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the other obvious reason is, so I always say that, I mean, there are big furniture companies that portray themselves as very sustainable, but if you boil it down to their business model, it's they want to sell as much furniture to as many people as possible, as often as possible. That's just that's how they make money, and there is an inherent, you can hear it, right? There's an inherent unsustainable cycle in there where you just have to produce more and cheaper, and also you can see that in the furniture industry. So the furniture got cheaper and also cheaper in the sense of pricing cheaper, but also how it's made. Yeah. So most items that you purchase just are not as durable anymore as they used to be when, say, your grandparents purchased and bought furniture. And in our case, it's exactly the opposite, right? As I just said, we the pricing in our case is derived from the depreciation time of furniture. So we want to place as many furniture for as long as possible into people's apartments. So we are highly incentivized to use high quality, sustainable furniture versus cheap, short-lasting stuff.
And in that regard, you also have a business model challenge to a certain degree because you have quite some high setup costs. You need to have the interior designer do their work. You have the furniture that you have to place there and bring there logistically. So how do you avoid that people sign up for your subscription, but then cancel after 3 months, and you basically have a huge minus on your bank account because you put all that upfront investment in there?
Yeah, we have a similar solution to other subscription plays in the P2C space, which is you basically have to commit between 1 and 4 years currently.
Okay.
And depending on, if you choose 1 or 4 years, the monthly price changes accordingly.
Yeah.
That's how we mitigate the risk that, you may drop out after 2 months.
Sweet. And then on the other hand, I think you also have a specific option available that once you stay with your subscription for a certain period, you also get the chance to actually purchase and own the furniture, right?
Yeah, so you have a purchase option if you, after 3 or 4 years, if you feel that, you really love the furniture and you want to keep it, then eventually it just doesn't make sense for you anymore to continue to renting it. Yeah. So then we offer you to buy it out at the remaining value. So you never pay more than retail.
It's that time of the year again. Swisspreneur is gathering feedback to become better at advancing entrepreneurship in Switzerland. If you'd like to give us your 2 cents, please reply to our user survey. Everyone who replies will get free Swisspreneur socks and stickers to sweeten the deal. Check the show notes on this episode for the survey link. And hey, thank you very much. Why does that make sense also for you from a business perspective? Because then you lose recurring revenue, which is not that attractive.
We do lose the recurring revenue, that's true. But we just felt that for the consumer, it just eventually makes more sense for them to purchase it. And we're okay off in obviously we're better off if you rent it perpetually.
Right.
Makes sense. But we're also doing okay if you eventually buy it out. So we're doing okay in both cases.
So you did the calculations there. That's great.
Yes.
You also briefly mentioned your co-founder who joined a bit later, and also, from your Cleverclip experience that you actually wanted to have a co-founder. Can you talk how you met and what makes you a strong team?
Yeah, sure. So that's a funny story. So Anand and I were both mentioned in, I think, 2018 on the Forbes 30 and 30 list in Europe. So he's originally from India, Delhi, lives in the Netherlands for the past 5 years. And he has a tech background, so he's the techie and responsible for the full tech stack, and I'm responsible for biz ops and marketing and all that boring stuff. And we originally met a few years ago, and then he reached out and asked me if what I'm up to and what my plan is. And the timing was just perfect. So we figured we should do this together. So I was already in Pabio, like I already committed to the idea, but it was really still early on. And so he joined in July last year, which was like about half a year after I started the company.
And why is the technical component that he brings to the table so important for your product?
That's on multiple fronts. So for one, furniture is very, very difficult to logistically. It's very, very expensive to ship around, right? So you want to make sure that your IT infrastructure really facilitates the whole logistics perfectly, and there are no mistakes. So we actually built our own ERP system just to make sure that everything works. Because if you ship furniture to the wrong address, it's very expensive to fix it. That's one. And then the other part, the more important part is, so how Pabio works is you upload your floor plan and some photos of your apartment. And then we generate automatically a 3D model of that apartment and fully furnish that 3D model. So you have an exact view of how your apartment will look like fully furnished. And that full render pipeline, there's quite a bit of tech in there. And so that's obviously we worked with existing open source components, but also we built a lot of custom scripting that took a bit of time.
That sounds amazing, and also way more scalable than a service business, so to speak, where you sell a specific product, but now you have the recurring revenue and you have the tech to make it scalable.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So you certainly moved the ceiling to new heights, so to speak.
That's the idea, yes.
I also want to talk about a few challenges that you might have faced across the journey, along the journey so far. So the first one is, having a subscription for your furniture. That's something that people are not really familiar with. They go to IKEA or they purchase their stuff online, but having a subscription is not something that people are familiar with when it comes to their own furniture. So how difficult is it for you to win new clients?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So there's a lot of education we have to do, and I think going forward, we will even have to do more. Right?
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if the broader we target the market now, the more demand creation we have to do, and not just demand capture. There are certain. So we started with certain early adopter groups that just fitted the case perfectly, which expats. They need, eventually. So most of the time they get a furnished apartment for a few months that the company pays for. But eventually, if they settle in, they have to purchase their own furniture. So in that case, obviously, Pabio makes a ton of sense. And then the second funny early adopter group is freshly divorced or separated men. It makes a ton of sense if you think about it. We didn't plan for this. We just realized that they're overrepresented in our customer base, and then digging into it, obviously kind of have to move out. They don't have furniture. They want to impress, the dates they take home. So everything kind of adds up. But then if we go broader, and we really want to target eventually, so we really want to eventually offer a better alternative to purchasing fast furniture every few years for all those young urban people that rent apartments, which is quite a broad TAM, and that requires a bunch of demand creation for sure.
How can you get there? I mean, this sustainable aspect, that is a huge USP that you'll bring to the table for that younger, the new generation, the Fridays for Future generation, so to speak. How do you plan to bring that demand into your IT platform?
Yeah, I just think it takes a lot of time to educate the market. And I think, we're still working on it, but I think you really work yourself from an early adopter cohort slowly towards, that big fat part in the middle of the Gaussian curve, where all the money apparently is, but it just takes, I think, a ton of time.
And are there any particular activities that you can do to educate the market? Like doing partnerships with specific media companies or working with influencers whatsoever? Do you have any plans there, or do you think it just needs time and step-by-step winning new clients that you can then grow through the word of mouth and educate the market that way?
No, I think if I say it takes a lot of time, I also mean it takes a lot of actions on our end. So we have plans in store to have multiple marketing channels now targeting rebranding campaigns and targeting a broader segment of the market. I think Carvolution did a fantastic job in this regard. I think they started, I believe, in 2018, and from what I can see, I think it took them some time, but now they really educated the market to the point where most people understand that purchasing a car just doesn't make a ton of sense.
And that, of course, to have those campaigns up and running, that also requires money. So here you did something different. You put on VC investors early on into Pabio, something you didn't do at Cleverclip. Can you talk a bit more about why that was the right step for you to take? And now, besides the pure learning experience, of course, why it makes sense to have investors on board for that case?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different to Cleverclip, right? We need a ton of capital to make this work. And it's also the first time for me where, Cleverclip as an agency, the P&L statement and the cash flow statement, they correlate quite closely, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a ton of profit, you also have a ton of cash to spend eventually. Yeah. And in the case of Pabio, they diverge. So the more profitable we are, the less cash generally we have, because we have to purchase all the furniture and everything up front, right? And that we don't pay all of that with equity. Obviously, we have a debt financing structure for that, but there's still a part of it that we have to pay for with equity. Right. So the business model just inherently requires a ton of capital, which means that we have to raise money from VCs.
And now, walking through both experiences with investor money and without, can you elaborate a bit more on the pros and cons of bootstrapping versus VC funding?
Yeah, so there are a ton of obviously pros on both sides of the argument. So bootstrapping you don't have any. So you have a super simple stakeholder management, right? I always said it's me. I take care of my employees, and my employees take care of my customers, of their customers. So it's just a super simple cascade, and then we have some partners, external partners, but that's about it. Yeah. And the interests are more or less perfectly aligned. And then that's just the point where, as a bootstrap business, you generate dividends. So you generate money and cash in real life, and that you can, reinvest or spend or whatever. And in a case of a VC-backed company, it's fundamentally different. At Cleverclip, I didn't have any reporting duties, right? I just was literally my own boss. And at Pabio, it's fundamentally different. So first of all, we have amazing VCs, really great people, and they are super supportive. But there's definitely pressure, right, to make the company grow fast and to, sometimes also take maybe bigger risks than you would normally take if it were your bootstrapped company. That's not because a VC explicitly tells you grow faster, take more risk, or otherwise I'm gonna, come and get you. It's really more, it's this implicit relationship that is established between the entrepreneur and the VC, because both agree to, this only makes sense at this valuation if it grows a lot.
Right.
And that is a dynamic that before going into I underestimated. That this faster, and it's very cool on one side, because it really moves you forward fast and quickly, but on the other hand, it's also it's quite difficult to do proper stakeholder management and figure out, do I now agree with them and do I want to do it as they intend to, or do I want to slow down because I believe it's the better route? And it takes some more overhead overall to orchestrate everything.
Can that also increase the pressure on you as a founder? You mentioned before, being a solo founder, you had to deal with the pressure yourself, but now you have a third party, the investors, that could sort of also increase the pressure that you didn't have before on top of everything else.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. At least it did for me. I feel a huge responsibility towards the people who gave us money. And I didn't take a salary for the first 1.5 years, basically, and only now started to pay myself something, but just because I didn't feel comfortable, taking other people's money and then paying a salary with that. So I yes, absolutely. I have a huge responsibility, which I didn't have when it was mine, right? Because it was the money I earned and the money I spent and wasted if I made the wrong decisions.
And at the same time, the investors can also be an important support factor, right? So they're like your third co-founder in the game to a certain degree because they have the same interest to see the company succeeding. Did you feel any difference there? Or asked differently, what is overweighting, the support or the increased pressure that you didn't have before?
I think the difference is the support is very explicit, and they really sit with you on a table and give you support, and the pressure is this implicit byproduct, right, of the relationship. Yeah. I think overall I really value having them on the cap table. It's just that, and at the end I should also say, even though they're fantastic, you still got to do the work yourself, right?
Of course.
So I think there's also, I don't know, but at least me personally, I had this idea that having a great VC on the cap table will alleviate some of the problems. No, they're not going to help you solve your problems. You got to solve the problems yourself, right? So
I think that's a fair reality check.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're there with you, and you can ask them anything you have questions, but you still, you're the driver, and you have to fix the problems yourself. And I should also say, I want to push back a bit on this idea that the interests are fully aligned. They are, right? They want to see the company grow, and we want to see the company grow. So in this case, yes, absolutely. If you just look at one company, which is us, but if you look at Pabio is one small company, a huge portfolio. So they have their risk fully diversified. We don't, right? We're full in. So if this doesn't go well, I wasted, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of my life, probably the best years, and nothing came out of it, right? Whereas the VC, obviously, they have, they're the smart ones, really, because they diversified the risk. They don't really care if company A or B will succeed. Well, they will not tell you this, obviously. They will always say, sure, we really care about it. And I believe that, right? I do believe that. But just rationally, it really doesn't matter. They know that, there's like this power law, and one of the companies will outperform all the other losses, and that's the game. Yeah. That's the game. Exactly. Fair enough. But it's just that the I think the interests then diverge a bit, where they just want you to go full risk, right? Because they already diversified their risk by having multiple companies in their portfolio, right? So they can go full on risk with each individual company because they already did the diversification. Whereas we obviously, we don't. So I think there's this slight deviation. And I think that may or may not add up eventually to some, problems.
If we take that thought a bit further, also combining it with your SME experience with Cleverclip that you successfully built up to a solid SME business, here now with the VC-backed setup, you are sort of not pressurized, maybe that's the wrong word, but incentivized to take higher risks, to take more risks, which can also increase the stress and also the pressure on you as a founder. But then at the same time, maybe you will get into a situation where you then took too much risk and the company gets killed because of that risk-taking appetite from the VC, and because you taking it. Well, if you took a slightly different approach, a more defensive approach, the company might survive and you might also save some jobs, etc. So while I see the math game, the power law, one company returned the whole fund, you actually, the zero sum at the end, the pure sum of the outcome might not be maximized because of that, and you kill companies that might have been able to survive on their own without the too high risk taking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of these cases where the Nash equilibrium is just not where the optimal the optimal solution is. Right. Yeah, absolutely. But on the other hand, it's also, it just creates this dynamic where I could make the argument that without the VCs and without this pressure, you may become an SME that could have the potential to become a huge,
fair point,
huge case, but
Yeah.
you never know.
You never know. Yeah.
You never know, right?
Of course.
Because you just don't have that pressure to
Yeah.
grow fast and grow big. Yeah.
So it's never black and white. We're really in a gray area, so to speak.
Unfortunately, it is, yes. So you never. I can make the argument for both cases, and I never know which one is true.
Now, with your experience, if you had to choose one, would you go the bootstrapped way or the VC-backed way?
I mean, for now, I really enjoy the ride, and I think Anand and myself, we really want to turn this into a big thing. Very, I think, untypical for a Swiss startup. We really went into this and said, we either go very, very big or we go home. Yeah. Where I think we try to be humble in many things, but in this one thing we're not. And for that, that's the game now we chose to play, and it has its pros and cons, but it's a lot of fun.
And you also really put the money where your mouth is, because recently you participated in the well-known Y Combinator program. I think that really shows how big your ambitions are. How did that change you and also impact your business, that program?
Yeah, so we were one of the first Swiss companies that got accepted with COVID and YC opening basically remote batches now. We were in the first cohort where a bunch of Swiss companies got accepted into it, it was a really great experience. I mean, it's very expensive. They take 7% for that's public, so I can share this, for a post valuation of about 2.1 million, if I'm not mistaken.
It's quite a sweet deal.
It's YC prints money. It's crazy. Yeah. And so there, but it's absolutely worth it. I think we in these 3 months of participating in the batch, I think tripled our sales, and we really learned to grow fast, sometimes break things, and really focus on this singular goal of finding product market fit. Yeah. And then obviously after that we raised a really good seed round from US and European investors that I think would have been possible without YC, but probably not at that valuation.
That's a very interesting part, right? The YC brand is so strong that once you're in the program, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you can then take on the next financing round at the very good valuation.
Yeah, I mean, I think YC helps with, I should say, I need to clarify this a bit. I mean, YC by now is so big, and the media only covers the YC companies that do really well, right? You have still like the majority that just doesn't make it. So so the batch is organized in groups and then sections, and from our section, those were the companies I know really well. I think we were 10, and 2 already dropped out of the race and are dead. Yep. 6 months in, basically, or 9 months in. And obviously no one, survivorship bias, right? No one talks about that.
Right.
But for those who make it, yes, YC is a really good brand for early stage VC fundraising. I don't think YC helps you finding a product that people love. You have to do this yourself, but at least the fundraising part becomes easier, probably significantly easier.
Yeah. In that regard, if you then go in with such a high valuation, now as a founder, talking about the pressure again, are you afraid that you then also have some issues to deliver that and to eventually face a down round? Because once you have that high valuation, it's really difficult to go back.
Yes, I mean it absolutely is. That's the risk for playing this game, right? But then again, that's one of the things where Anand and I just said we knew this going in. We knew, like, we thought everything through, and when we applied we had very long conversations about if this is the route we want to take, and there's not a right or wrong answer to this, but we just felt let's just go all in, and either it will go well or not, but we decided to go all in, and then obviously it makes a ton of sense because if you raise at these crazy high valuations, you dilute yourself less. So, even if you have to raise a bridge round a year after because it's not going that well, even if you raise that bridge round at the previous valuation, you're still better off, than raising lower and then increasing it. Obviously, the one thing you don't want is a down round. That's clear, but we hope that's not going to happen in our case.
And then to also be fair and circle back to the intro where you said, hey, you're so lucky to be born in Switzerland, to grow up with a good family. What do you actually have to lose if your big ambitions, the plans, wouldn't work out? I guess not that much.
That's the thing, right? I mean, that's all, like, that's the whole point, right? It's the downside for starting a company in Switzerland are so low that I really don't understand why not more people are doing it. It really just rationally, in my opinion, doesn't make any sense. The one thing I do understand, like the one kind of pushback is this culture of, we've heard this multiple times on this podcast, this culture of, not celebrating failures, right? And I should say this is now working with American investors and with YC folks. That's fundamentally different. It's fucking cool if you raised a few million in the US and then you killed the company because it didn't work out. Because everyone understands it's a full, like, the difference to Switzerland is it's a full on, it's an industry. Right here it's like a small community, and there it's a fucking proper industry, and they understand that there are so many outside factors that change the trajectory of your company that you cannot possibly control for, that it's just part of the game that you eventually sometimes fail, and they celebrate this. And I think we definitely here in Switzerland we definitely need to do a better job at this.
So if it doesn't work out, we probably see you moving to the US and trying it again there.
I mean, that's I'm obviously not, I shouldn't probably say this if any of our investors listen to this, but I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, the investor de-risks himself by having multiple companies in your portfolio. You as an entrepreneur, you just de-risk yourself by staying in the game, and if it fails, you just, how many companies can you start? Like, let's say if it's a failure, you probably know it's gonna fail in 2 to 3 years, right? Yeah. So you have about 10, 15 companies you can start in your lifetime. I mean, if you're reasonably talented and you stick to it, at least one of those will eventually become a success, right? Yeah. So you do the same thing as a VC does, just on the time scale. You just do it differently,
and maybe in different geographies.
Yeah, maybe. Well, ideally you don't have to, right? Ideally you don't have to. Yeah. And I honestly think like if you're responsible with the money, if you're decent, and if you work hard, and everyone sees that it just wasn't meant to be, then I think the drawback is not.
People understand it's part of the game.
I mean, hopefully, Otherwise, they're in the wrong game.
Yeah, and the beauty about that is, trying 10 to 15 times, you only have to be right once.
That's the thing, right?
That's the beauty of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Wow. So now, of course, we're also very curious to hear what's next for Pabio and you. What do you have planned for the future?
Yeah, so we just launched in Germany, Berlin. That happened 2 weeks ago. And now we're wrapping up this year. And then next year, we're going to expand to more German cities. Probably Munich and Frankfurt will be next. Yeah. And then if everything goes well, we're going to expand to one more European city, And then we're going to raise our Series A probably Q3 next year.
Okay. And is the US also on the horizon, or is that still something for later down the road?
I think the US is something for later down the road. We have a few fantastic competitors in the US. Some of them are even invested in Pabio. And I think there's so much space here and demand here in Europe. Yeah. And then also if we go, more east, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, there's a ton of, there's a big market there. So I think the US will wait for now.
You having great and very big ambitions, you also have potential exit partners on your cap table now. What's your plan? Do you want to sell the company one day or do an IPO? What's your goal there?
That always makes me feel uncomfortable because I really don't want to sound arrogant. But if everything goes well, and probably won't, because that's how life is. But if everything goes well, we would do an IPO. Yeah.
Where? Switzerland or the US?
I mean, now I want to obviously say Switzerland because we had this big company that just did one and it didn't do it here. So I feel there's a spot that is open there. But I also fully understand why they chose the US. It's just the liquidity obviously is significantly lower if you do it in Swiss francs.
And the B2C product can also have an important factor in that decision.
Absolutely.
Depending where you'll be there, maybe you'll do it Far East, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to wrap up this episode, we have some rapid fire questions for you. So I either give you a short question or different options to choose from, and you have to answer in one sentence. You ready?
Ready.
So with the exception of Pabio, what's a subscription service that you could not do without?
Athletic Greens.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. How many hours of sleep did you get last night?
7.5.
Cool. If you had to pick one style, Scandinavian, modern chic, or industrial?
I would choose industrial. I guess my wife will make me choose modern chic.
Okay. So I guess your apartment is then a mix of both of them.
Yeah, that won't look nice, no.
By the way, you have to send us a picture that we can put somewhere of your apartment because you advertised it so nicely, so everybody wants to see it now. What does money mean to you?
Freedom.
Yeah. And the last one, Bern or Zurich?
In the heart, always Bern, I hope for you as well.
Sure.
But I think the gravity pulls you towards Zurich.
Yeah. I mean, you live in Bern, but I guess you spend quite some time here in Zurich, right?
Yeah. The only reason why we're not in Zurich yet is because we just couldn't find the decent apartment yet that we really love. Yeah.
Nice. Carlo, thank you so much for stopping by. That was a lot of fun, and we're super excited to see how your journey continues, and we love the big ambitions that you put out there. Thank you so much for joining.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.